paper is from Nature by Jared Diamond. If you has a habit of reading some of the bestseller book in the States, Jared Diamond is a very good writer. He has written very, very interesting book, but he has also some very famous articles in Nature. And one of these being in Taiwan's Gift to the World, mainly talking about the Formosan languages. I think this is included in your reading. It's a very short article. So over here, I just want to go quickly with some of the content that's mentioned in the reading. From the very beginning, Jared Diamond said humans are defined by their languages, and this has been the message I have been trying to convey or trying to persuade you to believe in, and I hope that let's see if that will work. So he says that Taiwan Formosan languages plays a very important role of Taiwan in human history, because the Austronesian language family, with 1,200 languages in total, tells us a great deal about the history of the Pacific people and the boat building, as well as about Aboriginal Australia, because the Formosan language covers a wide span of area, and we will see that in the next slide. Austronesian language family is possibly the largest family among the 6,000 languages of the modern world. So we said that there are probably 6,000 languages now in the world, but the Austronesian would constitute, what's the percentage? 1/5, right? 20% of the total. So this is the area where Austronesian languages will be spoken. And you see, out of the 10 subgroups of Austronesian languages that I have shown, I just shown you 4 major groups. 9 are confined to Taiwan. So Taiwan is here. And all this area are the area that will be speaking Austronesian languages, and this is Taiwan. Out of the 10, 9 are spoken in Taiwan. And all Austronesian languages outside Taiwan belong to the 10th group. Also, the 10th group has 1174, as I said. And you will see the green area, which includes Polynesian languages, the dark green as well. Okay, so all this green and dark green, they together constitute the 10th subgroup of the Austronesian language family. So the 10 subgroups. So those 1,200 Austronesian languages fall into 10 subgroups according to Jared Diamond's paper, of which 9, containing only 26 languages, are spoken only by the non-Chinese aborigines of the island of Taiwan. Okay. And the 10th subgroup encompasses all Austronesian languages outside Taiwan, from Madagascar to East Polynesian, and there will be 1,174 in total. So Austronesian languges is the most widely distributed language families what's happening? It includes all languages spoken on all Pacific islands and spoken across a realm spanning 26,000 kilometers from Madagascar in the west to Easter Islands in the east. So it has a wide geographical area. And there are no preserved samples of writing in any Austronesian language until about 670 AD, when the family's expansion was nearly complete. So the family expansion, the language expansion, complete around 670 AD. So how do these language families differentiate? Language change over time, and dialects, once mutually intelligible, gradually will become more and more distinct. This is a fact that we all know. The early diversification of this existing Austronesian languages must have taken place long ago in Taiwan. Okay? Must have taken long ago. Eventually, just one group of Taiwanese migrated to other islands, and their descendants, in turn, emigrated to still other islands to become ancestral to all living Austronesian people outside Taiwan. So this is the hypothesis, and this hypothesis has been proven by many converging evidences from different fields. So they think, okay, if this theory is correct, then it starts from Taiwan. And after they have stayed in Taiwan for a long time, some of their descendants migrate to other islands, and probably in other islands, then they start to spread out. So you could see the wide geographical span of the Austronesian languages. And this expansion correlates well with archaeological evidence. Studies of pot, tools, and bones have shown that all farming in the Pacific outside New Guinea stems from the colonization of Taiwan by South Chinese farmers around 4300 BC, followed by the expansion through the Philippines and Indonesia to Polynesia, the Malay Peninsula, and Madagascar. Okay, so this is the root of their expansion, and they use archaeological evidence such as pot making or the tools they use to also support the evidences built up by the linguist. So the archaeological evidence is this: the first potter must have spoken Austronesian languages. Why? Because all traditional languages throughout Polynesian are Austronesian. In the Pacific, identifying the pot makers is quite easy because all Polynesian islands were uninhabited until the arrival of people making the so-called lapita pot began at around 1200 BC, and there's no archaeological evidence for arrival of other people after them. If you go to, if you have ever been to, what is that? Bali, Indonesia. Do you see a lot of people making pots? Yeah, they still have that skill. Yeah, you don't remember it? Okay. From the archaeological evidence, they just found that the pot making skill started from here and stayed there for quite some time. So, and not only in the pot, also in the tools making. For example, like in making the boats, the details of Austronesian languages also proven as instructive as the main pattern of the boat making. Why? Because the contrast between the big differences among Taiwanese languages and much more modest differences among the non-Taiwanese languages suggests that there was a long pause between the Austronesian colonization of Taiwan and the Austronesian expansion out of Taiwan. What does it mean by long pause? That means these people have stayed in Taiwan long enough before they emigrate to other islands or to other places. Why is it long enough? They give you the evidence. The long pause, they think the long pause is around 1,000 years long. And this 1,000 years is between the farmers' colonization of Taiwan and their subsequent colonization of the Philippines. They have seen different kind of crops in Taiwan versus what they have in the Philippines. Also, they have found different kind of boats in Taiwan and different kind of boat. I mean, boat in a general sense, because you're going to see in the Philippines, you're going to see the canoes, but in Taiwan, you only see the raft. We'll show you. Why is the long pause? Because the time required to develop the lead in boat technology. Why? Because if you want to move outside of Taiwan, if you want to go south to the Philippines, the 375-kilometer sea separating Taiwan from the Philippines, it'll be quite difficult just to travel it by a simple boat technology. So it will require much better boats than crossing the 140-kilometer strait between mainland China and Taiwan. Okay, so it's a longer distance, and you need better boat in order to accomplish the mission. The shipbuilding revolution that brought the Philippines and the Indonesian within reach, the invention of the outrigger canoes. So in Philippines and the Indonesian, the outrigger canoes is quite common and popular even nowadays. However, you don't see that in Taiwan. But many words identified by Bluss, Robert Bluss, that's another linguist working in Hawaii, for the component parts of these canoes in extra Taiwanese Austronesian languages, but none of that is found in the Taiwanese languages, the Taiwan Formosan languages. That means you have many lexical items, many words that tells you about the different component parts of the boat. But they are only in the extra Taiwanese Austronesian languages, but not in Taiwan Formosan languages. In Taiwan Formosan language, in historical time, canoes were widespread among Austronesian people except for the Taiwanese, because in Taiwan we don't have canoe. And also Taiwan only had the bamboo sailing rafts. So from the boat making technology, you also found out there's a long pause between the colonization of the Chinese farmer to Taiwan, to Taiwan, okay? And in fact, there are two such long pause. Each pause lasted about 1,000 years. The first one is about the bow making, and the other one is about the Lapita colonization of the West Polynesia and the colonization of the East Polynesia. What does it mean? That means from after they have emigrated to another island, the Taiwanese tribe have emigrated, one of the descendants have emigrated. They also have stayed a long time in one particular area before they were spreading out to other areas. Why? Because for the same reason, what did Bluss, I'm sorry. According to Bluss, the long pause was convinced by the archaeological evidences as well, except that the first time is from the bow making and the second one is from the pot making. So they from these skills, they have confirmed that each time they have been spread out, they stay in that area for a long time, long enough for them to become the same language family before they were spread out. And this brought out issues in historical linguistics, because the 260 some Aboriginal Austronesian languages now spoken in Austronesian areas are usually considered to belong only to one single language family. That means those 260, they stick together. They did not become many different language families group. They stay being one language family. People living in Australia for 50,000 years, which is a long time, ample time for repeated differentiation of language family. Means out of 50,000 years, you are able to develop into different language families, but this did not happen. Those 260 Aboriginal Austronesian languages, they belong to one single language family. Because Aboriginal Austronesian history says that they really do not have the kind of homogeneous population movement similar to the spread of Chinese farmer. In the spread of Chinese farmer, it's like one language family replace the other family, so they are easily they could easily stay in the same language family. But this is not the case in Austronesian. However, from the Austronesian languages, we found out they still belong to one single family. So something must have happened. The Austronesian languages are similar in sound, but diverse in their vocabulary. And this sounds resemblance, remember we talked about cognate, because they come from the same origin. They come from the same etymology. So we can tell that they are from the same language family. So linguists consider this language related, but had to explain away their divergent vocabulary. So they have to find out an explanation to say why this language would have similar sound but divergent vocabulary. So the diversity in Taiwanese languages were formerly overlooked for several reasons, including their similar sound inventories. For instance, the lack of the so-called palatal consonant, such as 支持时. Okay, they don't have 支持时. And plus point to other cases in which similar sound system has spread over geographically adjacent language families whose distinctness on other ground is beyond question. So this sharing of sound is expected to develop in an area such as Aboriginal Australia, where each language is confined to a small tribelet and where all children grow up multilingual so they can understand and marry members of neighboring tribelets. So how do linguists reconstruct the linguistic history or the history of a particular people speaking languages? They try to use sounds, and because the sound has correspondence, they have the cognate, so that they can compare similar sound. We have mentioned this before, right? We said, remember we talked about this P to F development? Okay. In Taiwanese, something with a good smell is pronounced as pang, pang. Okay, and this pang usually we write in this, but actually it's more. It should be written in this character, pang. And pang in Mandarin is pronounced as fang, pang, fang, and when you compare these two, using the comparative method we have just mentioned, we see a P to F kind of development. And this development is not just in Mandarin, because we found the same thing in Latin, right? Because you have padre and father. So P to F is very common in sound development, in phonetic development. What else do we have P to F? Do we have other things that you can come up with? P to
foot, right?
huh?
Foot?
Foot? Yeah. And
I don't know what
yeah, very good. Okay. And you have that how do I spell, how do you spell Pisces? Yeah. What's the zodiology for fish? Pisces. P-I-C. Yeah. Right? Is that correct? S-C? Okay. So you have, again, the P to F development. So you have seen a lot of P to F development across the board, not just in one language family, but in different language families, you have this P to F development. So you use comparative method. You can see, even though the final may be different, but you can see this vowel. And also for this pang and fang, this is perfect matching. But padre and father, maybe you don't have everything matching, but you have the major vowel and the initial consonant the same way. Okay, and this is different because then you, in English, you have the great vowel shift. So the vowel has gone through some other changes as well. But the initial consonant, P to F, is very clear there. Okay, this should be reversed because this is order, right? So now you still have pedestrian, right? Pedestrian meaning by walking, related to foot. So Plus comes up with this hypothesis, and with this hypothesis, we will end today's lecture. So his hypothesis is that suppose an English tribelet and a French tribelet thrown together with 258 others in an area the size of Australia were forced to mate with members from other tribelets and were left in isolation for 50,000 years, because this is exactly the history of the of the language in Australia, right? They have 50,000 years that we have just mentioned, and there are now 260 languages. They belong to the same family, same language family. So they are making the hypothesis. They say, let's imagine this situation. So at the end of that era, there might still be 260 languages with distinct vocabularies and grammars, but French and English might now be similar in their sound. This is just a hypothesis. They are trying to make you understand why the 260 families are related, and they should be collapsed into one single family. And the multilingualism of Aboriginal Taiwanese and Australians represented the norm for almost all of human history. That was the conclusion based on the hypothesis that have been made by linguists. And so Jerry Diamond just tried to collapse all the evidences and findings by these linguists and make this kind of conclusion. So why is Austronesian languages or Formosan languages in Taiwan so important nowadays, and the government is willing to spend so much money to fund a lot of research projects to discover more about the genetic relationship of these Formosan languages? Is precisely because we believe, and as many linguists have agreed, that the origin of these Austronesian languages starts from Taiwan. Okay, and it has been here for a long time before it was spread out south to the Philippines, before the Polynesian has spread it out again to the East Polynesia, etc. Okay, so this is the kind of reconstruction we try to make, and we are still in the process of finding more convergent evidences in order to establish that theory. Okay, so that it will no longer be a hypothesis.